Hi, Leslie. Good to see you.
Hey Dirk, hey, I'm so grateful that you've invited me to a lovely cup of coffee.
Well, listen, thank you very, very much for coming to the our new series. It's TEDx Luxembourg City presents coffee with my TEDx coffee mug. And in this case, Leslie, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. You've got a lot less people around you this time. It's a bit
Yes,
quiet.
the at the TEDx event, there's a volunteer team of around, well, between 40 and 50, depending on which event. But yes, it's always very, very hectic, isn't it? So this
Yeah.
time we can see each other in a little bit more of a relaxed environment. Yeah. So for those that haven't seen your TED Talk, and I will certainly link the TED Talk here below in this YouTube clip. Um, Really, you came to TEDx Women and you came to talk about what's so incredibly important these days. And I think people are really understanding the importance of being sustainable, environmentally friendly, um, and also how slightly difficult that is. I know when we invited you on, we became super aware, uber aware, that we as event managers had to make our event as sustainable as possible. And my word, it wasn't massively easy. And it's not because we didn't have the best intentions, but we're working with suppliers, with sponsors, and telling them to get rid of certain things. It's really difficult. So instead of me continuing to introduce you, may I ask, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit and what you do?
Sure, sure. Before I do that, I just wanted to comment on the event. It was amazing how you did embrace the whole sustainability angle to it, and how you started sourcing suppliers who were a little bit more sustainable. And that was really fantastic. And it shows you how quickly we can adapt. And that's what I loved with, when I first mentioned to you, you actually reacted quite quickly and said, sure, let's focus on that. So it was really wonderful. And then just from my perspective, we're an Irish NGO based in Ireland, Dublin, and we launched with the concept June last year. And really, we just were building a brand at that point. And then I was particularly focusing around the whole blue growth sector, and that was marine plastics. And that's where my TEDx talk topic spun off from. Was my passion really is marine biology and conservation, and hence my in-depth dive into the TEDx talk around how we can solve the whole plastic crisis. We know that the oceans are inundated with plastic pollution.
By
And
the way, I have to mention at this point, so my wife is, and she's the one that introduced you to and what you do. So my wife is an instructor, scuba diving instructor, and she launched her own little YouTube channel, Scuba for Families, what it's like taking families out. But she has been involved with Project Aware for quite a long time, the Paddy organized charity. And so we had her 40th birthday the other day, and all of the presents went directly to Project Aware. And we managed to raise over 2,000 euros for them. So that was really fantastic.
that is incredible.
But it's so unbelievably important when you travel around and you see the extent to which plastics has infiltrated marine life. It's really rather shocking. And of course, because my wife drags me everywhere, I get to see that firsthand. And I think you had somewhat of a similar experience. You were saying you were walking on the beach and you saw the plastics.
Yeah, and that's how it all started. I walk on the Irish beaches and the Irish rivers, and I started noticing this huge influx of plastic and effluent in the waters, toilet paper, you name it. And I thought, well, let me start actually picking this up, because clearly it's not going away. And so I started the single woman campaign, picking this up. And I thought, actually, I can't, continue just doing this myself. I need to find a way where I can create a larger difference. And that's where the whole idea came about, me setting up a nonprofit focused on sustainability. And it eventually developed into the whole sustainability accelerator, which we now offer. And I'm truly grateful for the journey that we've gone through, because as you say, your wife took you to all these places and you started noticing how bad the pollution was. And now when I go for walks during the whole COVID lockdown, the pollution is even greater, because first of all, no one's picking it up, and secondly, people are just throwing their masks and their gloves on the floor, and nobody wants to pick them up either because they're so afraid of actually getting the virus. So it's such a compounded crisis, and each day I ask myself, how can I be solving this problem? And quite often that's what my thought process is how can I be solving the solution? And the accelerator that we offer, for me, is the biggest solution to the challenges that we faced with, because I want to be able to offer a solution to SMEs out there who are solving waste management problems, renewable energy, offering renewable energy, or creating new materials that can actually eliminate plastics.
And you're in quite a unique position to do that, I think, also, which is worthwhile the audience understanding, because you are an entrepreneur and you've been involved with a few companies, I think, in the tech world, and you started those, did very, very well with those. And then each time, I think you managed to sell them off and then launch another one. So you're a serial entrepreneur, but then at one point, I guess you decided, enough of the tech, I'm going to head into something that's truly, truly, I guess, the transition from just an entrepreneur to a social entrepreneur. Is that fair?
That is true. I mean, it's fair to say that. Actually, last year, I promised myself that I wouldn't continue starting up companies. I wouldn't continue being an entrepreneur. However, that sort of backfired on me when I said, well, let me start an NGO, because I was kind of thinking that I'm not starting a company. But I actually realized once again I had a startup. But for me, the passion was such an important thing. So I wasn't just starting up a company to be an entrepreneur, which quite often you do because you got this solution to solve this tech problem. And this time I actually had this deep passion, and I said, I'm just going to stick to it no matter what. Every day I'm just going to take a step forward and try and knock a chip off the old, that block to get to this whole solution.
So, and that's a process you've been involved with for how many years now?
Well, are you talking about the nonprofit?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that the idea was birthed about 2 to 3 years ago. And then when I started actively doing something about it was January 2019. Right. And then the brand started getting built in June last year. And we launched the company in November, December last year. So we're very, very young. But as you would see when you go onto the websites and our LinkedIn profiles, you'll see that we've grown tremendously. And, having given the talk to TEDx, that catapulted our presence out there to show people what we're trying to do and, what we're trying to bring awareness to. But since then, we've also been working on a film. We've produced an independent film. And I don't know if you've seen it yet. I can send you the link. But what the film really is about is how we're using those planetary resources, how humans are making a product and then wasting it. So the film highlights the huge pollution problems that we have out there. But then we also start interviewing a few entrepreneurs on ways where we can implement circular economy processes to actually solve those problems, those pollution problems. So it's actually quite a cool film to watch, just to really raise your awareness around it.
Leslie, for those people that are interested, what's the name of the NGO? And then what I'll do also is I'll put a link to the movie, if that's okay. Here.
That'd be great.
Because no, actually, I haven't seen that movie.
Oh, okay. I have to send it through to you. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Please do.
So the NGO is called The Planet Calls, and we kept the film simple, and we also called it The Planet Calls Film. Right. And it is on YouTube, and we premiered on the 1st of April, and we were obviously going to do a physical premiere, but we had a lovely launch online, and it really went quite nicely. And so we're very excited about that.
So, as you say, you're very young, but everything was building up and you launched the end of last year, or the brand has been recognized since the end of last year. And then suddenly, in January, things started to change absolutely unexpectedly in such an incredible way. And you've already alluded to the fact that things have changed to the extent that people are now physically afraid to pick things up. And I think rightfully so. I know when here in Belgium, when I go to a particular shop, they actually give us rubber gloves to put on, and a mask for when we walk in. And so we do our shopping with the mask and with the gloves. And on the way out, there's a bin, and they expect everybody to pull the gloves off and the mask and throw it in the bin straight away. And that's doing grocery shopping. So every time I walk out, I keep them on, and take them to the car, and I try and use them. Now, again, I'm not sure that's probably the right thing to do either, but growing up in this household with my wife constantly telling me, hey, we need to be careful about throwing stuff away. How are you finding this whole change? It must be hugely difficult.
I think COVID at first presented huge fear in all of our lives. And I was actually reading a very interesting report today around the 4 phases that we're all going to be going through. And I actually have it here in the background, where the phases are, we went through panic, and I believe we're now in the acclimation phase where we're stabilizing. And so we're getting into our routines, we're finding our way around things, and then we are slowly moving into the recovery phase, where we see a light at the end of the tunnel, where we know, okay, various restrictions are going to be lifted because COVID virus is becoming contained, or we have warmer weather arriving, so there's less panic around that. And then eventually we'll return to fair normality, because we know that over the next 2 to 3 years, it will take a while for us to recover, but things will return to normal. So I believe we're going to be going into the recovery phase soon, particularly in Europe. I'm not talking about the countries in the south who are now going into winter, and that's a big concern. But as you mentioned, we've got the single-use plastics that we're using just to stay alive, to make sure that we don't catch the virus, and to protect our loved ones. And I was chatting to one of my colleagues last week, where we were saying, how are we going to solve the plastic gloves and the masks that you see in the floor, on the ground? And there is no solution at this point. But I'm very optimistic around this time, because COVID, I believe, is sustainability's big break. And I believe that this has been like a reset button for us, where we as people and entrepreneurs who own businesses, we are learning that you can slow down, you can work remotely, you don't need to have all that travel and add to the carbon emissions flying everywhere. You can have your meetings online. So we've seen the reports of how the earth and how nature has quickly bounced back with just the humans being removed from the cities. I mean, you've seen the goats in Wales just taking over villages. It's so beautiful, and peacocks arriving, and dolphins were actually swimming in Hout Bay in Cape Town, the hugest pot of dolphins you've ever seen. And I just love that this is the message that we have, that Earth is giving us. Sure, we have this crisis, we're going to lockdown, but it shows you how quickly we can bounce back, or the Earth can bounce back, and nature can bounce back. So my big focus is obviously around climate change. And it shows you that with just a few adjustments that we can make, the response that nature has is very fast. And that's encouraging.
Yeah, I have a friend who's in fact a colleague from the TEDx community, a lady called Kat Haber, and she shared on Facebook this meme, basically saying, we're all complaining that there's nothing we can do about the environment, and there's nothing possible, and then Mother Nature just turning around and saying, here, have a virus, go practice. But it's incredible, as you say, and just the satellite images of how pollution has dissipated in certain areas, and how you can see is absolutely remarkable. And the onset of spring here has really made a difference also, because we go outside and it's never been brighter, it's never been fresher. It's
Yes.
absolutely a wonderful environment.
I think it's a very good reset for families as well. we were living in such a fast-paced world, and for me there wasn't much change because I work remotely anyway, and I've been doing that for many years. So my business runs in that way. We are very remote. We have people scattered everywhere, and that was one of the requirements of setting up a company. I needed it to be as low cost as possible. I didn't want to have overheads. I didn't want to have an office that actually consumed plastics, and you just spent money on rental, and it works really well for me. And now that we have this COVID virus, keeping us all at home, it's a reminder of we have to have that family balance, we have to have that exercise balance, focusing on our health, but at the same time realizing that we can actually work from home as well. So there's going to be a lot of changes happening when we get out of this period. And I'm very curious to see what habits are going to stay. Right. I want to know if that habit of traveling everywhere for a meeting is going to stop. I want to know if more and more companies are going to be shutting down their offices and sending their employees home and saying, work from home, have a happy life. Let's cut down on overheads and commuting and things like that.
Well, here's hoping that something very, very positive comes out of this. And I think if there's anything that would naturally transition out of this, it's traveling a lot less. I work at a university in Brussels, and I work at a university in Luxembourg, and just the commuting between places. So I live sort of somewhere in between. But it takes me half an hour to get into Brussels, an hour and a half to get into Luxembourg. And I travel all the time. Now, I did actually end up buying an electric car because, well, one, I absolutely love the electric car. But secondly, my wife gave me no choice. She said, if you're going to be traveling this much, we're going electric. So with the solar panels, it's practically free electricity, which is wonderful. So I think that's a wonderful message to send out there. But so if you had to condense a message to our audience just in a single sentence, if I can ask you to do that, and maybe 2 sentences if you what's the one thing that you want to say to our audience just to finish off our coffee? What would you say to everybody listening?
Dirk, I think that this time now has shown me that those who show resilience and those who don't give up will be the ones that are winning. And I mean that in every sense, from just a person being at home or to being a business owner. If you show resilience or you show adaptability, you will survive. And so that's it. Yeah, be resilient, don't give up, and we will win over this.
That's fantastic. Leslie, thank you very, very much. I very much enjoyed my coffee, more for the company than for the coffee.
It was delightful being on the show. Thanks, Dirk, for inviting me.
Lovely. Talk to you soon, Leslie.
Take care, Dirk. Bye-bye.